third graders. Welcome to Journey's Lesson 18, A Tree is Growing, by Arthur Doros and illustrated by S.D. Schindler. The genre of this story is informational text. Remember, informational text gives information about a topic. As we read, we want to be looking for photographs and captions, graphics like diagrams that help explain the topic, and we want to be thinking about the text structure, which just means the ways that the ideas and information are organized. Let's meet our author, Arthur Doros. Arthur Doros loves trees. When he was 5, he planted a maple seedling. The tree grew taller than a 2-story house. The author believes that everyone has stories to tell. He encourages children all over the country to write. Let's meet our illustrator, S.D. Schindler. When S.D. Schindler was just 4 years old, he won a red wagon in a coloring contest. S.D. Schindler loves nature as much as he loves art. He used plants and animals from the woods near his home as models for the illustrations in A Tree is Growing. As we read, let's think about our essential question: what are some differences among types of trees? A giant tree may look as if it has always been big, but even the biggest tree keeps growing and changing. In the spring, you can see that a tree is growing as you watch buds on the branches unfold into leaves. We have what's called a sidebar over here on the right. You'll notice it's a thin section that has an illustration, and it's giving us some information. It says, bristlecone pines are the oldest known living trees on Earth. Some have been growing for 5,000 years, since before the pyramids in Egypt were built. And then we have an illustration of what the bristlecone pine looks like down below. Leaves can be skinny needles or big heart shapes. Whatever shape or size a leaf is, it makes food for the tree. A kind of sugar is made in the leaves. Trees use the sugar as food. And we can see on this page, we have several illustrations of different types of leaves. And each of them is labeled to let us know what type of leaf we're looking at. So we can see a white oak. We can see a ginkgo leaf. We can see an empress tree, a palm leaf, a breadfruit tree, a white pine, and a red maple. The sugary water made in the leaves is mixed with other tree juices called sap. The food in the sap is carried throughout the tree. Where a branch breaks or where bark is cut, sap oozes out of a tree. The strong smells of some saps can keep insects from eating the trees they live on. And then we have another sidebar over here, and it says if you rub a sassafras leaf, the sap smells spicy. And then down below, looks like we have an illustration of a maple tree, and it's telling us maple syrup is the boiled sap of sugar maple trees. A tree needs sunlight, air, soil, and water to grow. Water travels through passages in the trunk and branches up to the leaves. The water moves up the trunk as if it is being sucked through a straw. Sugary sap made in the leaves travels down other passages in the trunk, taking food to different parts of the tree. And then we've got an illustration of a type of tree called a baobab tree. And we have some information down below because we can tell by the illustration that it's the same tree. However, it looks very different, and it says 2 baobab trees showing the trunk in wet and dry weather. How interesting. Let's find out why the tree looks so different. It's telling us baobab trees store water in the trunks. When a baobab tree trunk is swollen with water, it is round and fat. In dry weather, the tree gets water from the trunk. Then the trunk gets thinner. How interesting. And it looks like we have a moth caterpillar, and we've got an illustration of what the inside of the tree looks like. So it's showing us the passages that the water travels through. The roots of a tree grow into the ground and hold the tree in place. Roots are like pipelines. They absorb water and carry it into the tree. A tree's roots spread out far underground. They usually grow out a little farther than the tree's branches. Trees need minerals to grow. Minerals are tiny particles that are found in the soil. Salt is one kind of mineral. Like salt, other minerals dissolve in water. They are mixed in with the water that roots absorb and are carried throughout the tree. Mushrooms growing among the roots of a tree can help it get minerals. And the mushrooms and plants growing near a tree get water brought by the tree's roots. If we look over to the left-hand side of page 100, we have some more illustrations in that sidebar over there, and it's giving us some more information. So let's look at the top illustration. It's telling us a few kinds of trees drop roots from branches into the soil to gather water. Banyan tree roots grow into columns all around the tree. How interesting, and we can see the picture of what that looks like. And then at the bottom it says, growing roots are strong. A root can lift a sidewalk or split a rock as it grows. By splitting the rock, it helps make soil. And we can see a picture of a tree that's actually breaking the concrete on a sidewalk. Now we also have lots of illustrations that are labeled to let us know what we're looking at. So we can see the tree over near the top of page 100 is a white oak tree. And then we can also see on page 100, well, we have some earthworms and a beetle grub. And then on page 101, we have some beautiful bicolored boletus mushrooms. Bark is the skin of a tree. The outer layer of bark protects the tree. When an oak tree is young, the bark is as smooth as a baby's skin. As the tree grows older, the bark becomes rough and cracked. Over on the right-hand side of page 103, we have another sidebar, and at the top it says, looking at the bark of a tree can help you know what kind of tree it is. And then we have a picture of a tree, and down below it says, the cork used for bulletin boards is the peeled off outer bark of a cork oak tree. Wow. And then down below that, we have another illustration, and it says honey locust bark has spines to help protect the tree. And we can see what that looks like. It definitely looks like some very good protection for that tree. I don't know about you, but I definitely don't want to touch that tree. On page 102, we can tell that that bird is called a flicker. And on page 103, we can tell that that type of moth is called a polyphemus moth. The bark you can touch and see is not growing anymore. Underneath it is a layer of growing bark called cambium. Each year's cambium growth is a ring in the wood of a tree. As trees add new cambium, the trees become bigger around. Next to the cambium are two layers called xylem and phloem. Water from the roots moves through the xylem, and sap from the leaves moves through the phloem. So over on the left in our sidebar, it's telling us, in cool climates, cambium only grows in spring and summer. Count growth rings to see how old a tree was when it died. An old fir tree can have over 1,000 rings, one for each year it lived. And then down at the bottom, we have another illustration, and it says, in tropical rainforest trees, the cambium grows all year, and there are no rings. It is hard to tell the ages of those trees. And then if we look at page 104, we can see some parts of the tree that we just read about are labeled for us, so we can actually see an illustration of what we just learned about the cambium and the phloem and the xylem. There we can see where the phloem is, It's pointing to that piece that's right behind the bark. And then next to the phloem is the cambium. That's the green part. And then next to that is the xylem. And then if we look at the top where the tree has been cut, we can see the growth rings. And we can also see a little snail hanging out on the bark there. On page 105, we can see an underwing moth. Trees grow bigger around, and they grow taller. As a tree grows, lower branches may fall off, making the trunk look longer. But the branches do not move upward on the trunk. A tree grows taller only at the top, as the tips of the top branches grow upward. If you find a mark on a tree trunk today, that mark would stay at the same height for as long as the tree lives. And we can see an illustration of that on this page. So we can see over on the left-hand side, we can see what the tree looks like when it's 10 years old. And we can see that mark on the side of the tree. And then next to that, we see the tree at 20 years old, and that mark is in the same spot. Next to that, there's the tree at 30 years old. The mark is in the same spot again. And then 50 years old, and then 200 years old. We can see how that tree has grown and changed throughout time. However, that mark is still in the same place because the tree only grows taller at the top. It's pretty fascinating. And then we also have a picture of a wild turkey on page 106. And on the right-hand side of page 107, we have a sidebar showing us a sequoia tree. And it says sequoias are some of the tallest trees in the world, over 300 feet tall. Wow. And you can see the people at the bottom, how small they are compared to that very, very tall tree. In the spring, you can smell tree flowers. Tree flowers are found in many shapes and colors and have many different smells. Parts of the flowers grow to become seeds. Oak trees have dangling clumps of flowers called catkins that help make acorns, the seeds of an oak tree. And we can see we have several different things labeled on this page. Up at the top of page 108, we can see what the catkins on an oak tree actually look like. Below that, we can see a male purple finch sitting on a branch of a saucer magnolia. And then over on page 109, we have a honeybee, wild cherry, and a female purple finch. Over on the left, we have our sidebar, and it looks like a picture of a nectar-eating bat and a calabash tree. And it says birds, insects, and even bats are attracted to flowers to drink their sweet juices. When they brush the flowers, the animals get a powder called pollen on them. The animals carry the pollen to other flowers. When the pollen mixes with certain parts of the flowers, seeds grow. Wind also helps pollinate flowers. An oak tree can drop more than 50,000 acorns in 1 year. Only a few of them grow into oak trees. Most are eaten, are crushed, rot, or land in a place where they cannot take root. Acorns can be carried away and dropped, or buried by animals to grow in new places. Other kinds of seeds blow in the wind or float on water. And we can see on this page we have a sugar maple. We have a sugar maple seed kind of blowing in the wind there. And then we can see the acorns at the bottom of the page. Over on the right-hand side on page 111, we have a gray squirrel climbing up the tree. And then over in our sidebar, we have some pictures. We've got a Brazil nut, a mountain pine cone, and a cherry. And at the top it says, different kinds of trees make seeds with different coverings. Nuts, cones, and fruits all have seeds inside. And then at the bottom, coconuts are seeds of a palm tree. A coconut can float across the ocean and sprout on a sandy beach. And we can see that on the bottom of the page. In cool climates, trees stop growing in autumn. The leaves of many trees stop making sugary food for the tree, and they lose their green color. Then you can see the red, brown, yellow, and orange colors that are also in the leaves. Pine trees and some other trees have needles or leaves that do not change color in autumn. When leaves fall to the ground, insects and worms eat them. The chewed and eaten bits of leaves make the soil better for growing trees and other plants. Over on the left-hand side, we have some different types of leaves, and we can see that they are different colors. The top leaf is a tulip poplar. Below that is a ginkgo, and then a big-tooth aspen, a sweet gum, and a pin oak. And it says autumn is a great time to collect leaves. Each tree has its own special color. We have lots of things labeled on this page. I see a millipede, earthworms, a spider, beetles, and a mole. Trees rest in the cold of winter, and their branches are bare. They may look as if they are dead, but look closely and you can see small buds that will become leaves and flowers in the spring. In the spring, listen to the wind rustling the leaves. The trees are growing again. And we have a picture here of a white oak and a horse chestnut. I hope you enjoyed this story, and I will see you next time. Bye!